Are you or have you struggled with implementing a least privilege and zero trust methodology around applying security policies and Linux UNIX devices within your organization? If so, I would like to provide a quick demo on how Micro Focus can help with ensuring a zero trust and a least privilege model around your enterprise. My name is Jeff Kistler, and I'm the product manager for products within the Micro Focus Privilege Management and Delegated Administration portfolio. And today we are going to walk through implementing a zero trust methodology using Group Policy Administrator and AD Bridge. For today's demo, we're going to walk through a user story and talk about how, again, using a zero trust model can help limit the need for native permissions and reduce the need for elevated permissions within your enterprise. So today we're going to walk through Abby user and her journey on getting access to do her daily responsibilities. Abby is a new user within the Demo Core enterprise, and she recently requested access in order to log on to a newly created Red Hat server in the domain. So let's walk through what the process looks like in order to get Abby access to this Red Hat server and how we can go through this without having to escalate privileges, both from a native perspective or creating a user account on the newly created Red Hat machine. So first and foremost, let's talk about what it looks like without a zero trust methodology and how we can change that using Micro Focus solutions. So let's say, for instance, in order to get access for this respective machine, we would have to log into the Red Hat machine and we would have to add Abby as a local user on the Red Hat machine. But this is not the right approach for doing a least privilege model because this is adding and expanding an elevated user within the enterprise, as well as another account that we have to maintain, in this case, on the Red Hat machine. So how do we pull back those challenges, and how do we implement more of a zero trust and a least privilege model? So let's walk through the process using the Micro Focus solutions. So what I have on my screen here is Group Policy Administrator, otherwise known as GPA. GPA is a solution that allows you to remove native Active Directory permissions for managing group policy objects. So how we do this is we leverage the ability to have administrators and GPO users use this solution without the need of an elevated account, where we can delegate specific access to those group policy objects. And doing so, mitigating the need for elevated access, as well as doing everything in an offline state where we're not going to impact the enterprise until those group policy changes have been vetted by the appropriate administrators. So if we take a look at the tool here, you'll notice that there's a whole bunch of different modules. So what we're going to quickly walk through is the delegation or the zero trust methodology. So what we use is the term active use, where we build the delegation in the various policies that we want to be able to be manipulated or modified by the right business owners, the line of business admins, or the respective individuals that manage those respective objects. In this scenario here, Abby needs to be able to manage the Linux servers in the enterprise. So what we've done is we've built a specific zero trust methodology around Linux management, where users in this respective delegation are only able to manage policies that apply to Linux devices. So you may be asking yourself, wait a second, Jeff, how is a GPO going to be applied to a Linux device? Well, that's where our other solution, AD Bridge, comes into play. And this solution allows you to leverage the Active Directory authentication authorization as well as security policy mechanism from AD to apply to those Linux and Unix devices, both on-premise and within the various cloud tenants offered today. So think about it from the standpoint of being able to log on with your Active Directory credentials regardless of where that Linux or Unix device resides. Again, whether it's on-premise in Active Directory or out in the AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, or any other of the cloud providers. So that's how we can integrate that and facilitate and allow Active Directory credentials, authorization, and group policies to be applied to those Linux devices so you have a heterogeneous environment in place where policy can be applied for both Windows Active Directory objects as well as Linux and Unix devices. So in this scenario with Abby, she needs to be able to, again, log on to the Linux server that we recently stood up and applied the AD Bridge mechanism to that. So we're going to walk through that user journey here now that I've given a little bit of backstory on the products. So when Abby, again, joins the enterprise, she needs to be able to log on to that device, that new server. So we're going to kind of demonstrate to you that Abby, again, needs to log on to the server to apply some application information and for this newly joined server. But when Abby goes to log on, you'll notice that she doesn't have access. So Putty says, nope, sorry, you have no access to the machine. So what do we do to mitigate this? And from a least privileged model and zero trust using Group Policy Administrator and AD Bridge, we're able to facilitate various administrators the ability to ensure that administrators are able to apply the right set of policies and mechanisms so that users such as Abby are able to log on to these devices without the need of a local user account. So we spoke a minute ago about least privilege with respect to group policy management. So what we're doing here is we have Jeff Blizzard who logged on to GPA, and we've only given Jeff the ability to manage group policy objects in this specific OU under the demo domain. So in this case here, the only OU and the only policies that Jeff has access to create are within this particular OU itself. So let's walk through this process and how it works. So when Jeff goes to, again, go through the process, he has to, oops. Sorry about that. We have to go ahead and log on back as Jeff. So we're going to log on as Jeff here. So when Jeff opens up the console, you'll notice that, again, the only objects he sees are those that he's been given access to. So in this case here, when Jeff clicks on the Linux server's OU, he has the ability to create a GPO. Now keep in mind, everything that we're doing in GPA is in an offline controlled state so that we're not touching the live Active Directory or Linux servers until we've got the appropriate approvals by the GPO team. So in this case here, Jeff has been delegated the ability to create a GPO. So we're simply going to call this rel access GPO. All right, so what's happening in the background here is that GPA is going to the backend repository and creating this new policy. So I'm going to go ahead and expand the screen here. And what you'll notice here is one of the great things about GPA is that we track and log and audit all of the activity done for group policies. So Jeff has just created the GPO, and in order to modify the GPO, he has to check it out, and he has to log a reason why he's checking this out. So in this case here, we're going to add an RBAC group in order to log on to that respective Linux machine in the Linux server OU. So all we're going to do is we're going to check out the GPO. So what's happening now is we're going out to the database and we're grabbing a copy of this newly created GPO. So as we are checking it out, we're going to notice that this looks very similar to your native Microsoft Group Policy Management console, with a slight variation with the inclusion and integration of the Active Directory or the AD Bridge software that we have talked about here. Is we'll be able to do a Linux management capabilities. So bear with me as I work on my demo SQL environment. It's a little bit sluggish, so this is not indicative of a performance issue with the product itself. So as soon as this is checked out, we'll be able to create that new policy that will allow Abby the ability to manage and log on to that Red Hat machine. All right, so if we expand computer configuration, we're going to see this snap in for Linux settings. So what we're going to do is we're simply going to go to the AD logon tab here, and then we're going to click on on-premise AD logons because we're going to hook into on-premise Active Directory in order to use our on-premise Active Directory authentication to log into. And when I click on the on-premise, I have the ability to say, allow these AD groups to log into. So if we follow the RBAC model of using group membership for access, we're going to find a group that has been designated access in order to log on to the environment. So we're going to find this rel access group here. So we're going to go ahead and add this group, and we're going to save it. So we've made that change. And as you'll notice, there's a lot of other features and capabilities with respect to AD Bridge integration for policy management, where with AD Bridge, we're able to define rule sets for firewalls, services, application configuration files, deploy files where we can deploy application-specific configuration information. When we apply those policies, AD Bridge has a file watcher embedded into it. So if someone were to log on to that rel server and make a change, AD Bridge would understand that a change was done, notify via your local SIM that a change was done, as well as roll back to what was in place with the group policy. So there's a lot of features and functionalities that AD Bridge brings to the table from the standpoint of managing Linux and UNIX devices, both on-premise and in the cloud. So we've made our changes to this GPO, but we also need to link this GPO too. So we're going to come over here to AD links, and we're going to make sure that this GPO is linked to the correct OU. So in this case here, we're going to pick Linux servers, and we're going to apply the link order change, and then we're going to check it back in, because what we have to do is every time we modify the GPO and edit the GPO, we need to check it back into the repository. So we're going to simply indicate what we did. All right. So we made a comment about what we did with this particular GPO. And now what we have to do is, now that we've created the GPO, it needs to be approved, because again, remember, we're doing this on the offline state. So what we're going to do is we're going to send this GPO for approval. So what's going to happen now is, if you've been granted the ability to approve a GPO within GPA, somebody has to approve that policy, because we really want to build this around least privilege and zero trust. So what we're going to do now is we're going to open up another console using a GPA administrator who has been granted access to approve and export GPOs. So what we see here is that this newly created GPO needs to be approved in order to be exported into Active Directory. So in this case here, again, we have auditing in place where we can simply check, realize who created the GPO, the changes made to the GPO, and if the GPO approver validates the changes, they can approve the GPO to be exported to Active Directory. So once it's been approved, it needs to be exported into AD. So in this case here, this GPO is staged to be exported into AD. And once it's exported into AD, it's going to go ahead and it's going to apply to any server that's a part of that Linux server's OU. So in this case here, we're getting a prompt. We're going to add a comment because we want to know what's going on with this policy. So in this case here, the GPO is being exported. And as you can tell, it's been successfully exported. At this point, this GPO should be applied to any server that's a member of this OU. So in this case here, here's the new GPO that we just created, as you can tell here, 63114. So at this point, as soon as the Red Hat machine picks up the fact that a new policy has been put into place, any any user that's a part of that login group, in this case the RHEL access group, are going to be authorized to log on to that respective Linux machine that's a part of this OU. So what we need to do is we need to ensure that Abby is a part of that login group. So we're going to simply log on to our console here, the DRA console, which manages Active Directory, and make sure she's a part of that administrative group. So in this case here, we're going to take a look at our members. And it doesn't look like Abby is a member of that group. So let's simply add Abby to that group. So there's Abby right there. We're going to go ahead and add her to the group. So she's now a part of that group. So again, when that policy applies to that Linux device, usually around a minute or so based upon the configuration of the AD Bridge configuration file, then Abby should be able to authenticate against the directory, as well as if there's any other policies that are applied to that Linux device will also go into effect as well. Okay, so we've applied the policy that Jeff Blizzard created in order to allow Abby to do her daily operations. And again, remembering that we're pulling in that least privilege and zero trust methodology where we only want to provide access to those objects that they should be managing. So now that Abby is a part of that RHEL group that we just added her to, the RHEL access group, as well as applying that newly created group policy object leveraging AD Bridge, let's try to log on to this Linux device using Abby's Active Directory credentials. So we're going to log on as abby.user, and then we're going to put in Abby's Active Directory credentials, and there you have it. So this demonstrates the capability that we can implement a least privileged methodology and zero trust framework around being able to leverage Micro Focus Group Policy Administrator and AD Bridge, where you can grant the right level of access to the line of business administrators or the help desk administrators so that they can get their job done with a least privileged model in place where you don't have to escalate and elevate permissions, as well as reduce and eliminate the need for local administrative accounts on other endpoints throughout the enterprise. I hope this helped to illustrate how using Micro Focus solutions, we can help you and your team implement a least privileged model and a zero trust methodology in your enterprise. Thank you and have a great day.